everyone. Welcome to another episode of Abeg Who Sent Me. If you're an entrepreneur or a wannabe entrepreneur, this is the podcast you should be listening to. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and I'm sure that you have an interesting time listening to us. My name is Titilayo Ekundayo. I'm the host of this podcast. Today we have an interesting person in the studio. His name is Tave Ayede. He's an Abuja-based sales consultant and event media professional who uses his knowledge to help other professionals grow their businesses and improve their client relation. To learn more about his business ideas, you can subscribe to his blog at www.taveshima.blogspot.com. But not to worry, it will be in the podcast description. Another thing I'm excited about is that he's the first podcaster I'll be having on this podcast. He has his own podcast. The name of the podcast is Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry. So sales is... I believe that everybody knows that sales principles are universal and can be adapted to any situation and to any business. So you should listen to his podcast. It's across different platforms. Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry. So I'm excited as to how much we are going to learn about sales today. It's good to have you here, Mr. Tavi.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. Sales, the almighty sales, the bloodline of any business. It's so wide, but I would like us to, for today, I'm hoping that you do us the honors to come back next time. But for today, I would like us to focus on the maybe 3 fundamental sales mistakes that entrepreneurs make in their businesses. So, over to you, Mr. Tavi.
Okay, so thank you very much. Again, I'm really glad to be here, and I'm glad that you're one of those people who appreciates that sales is the lifeblood of our businesses, and we should do whatever we can to learn how to improve our sales and our selling ability. Before we go forward, yes, I know that you want us to look at maybe 3 or 4 sales mistakes that a lot of us make. But unfortunately for you and your audience, I have more than 3 things that I want us to look at. Because when I agreed to come on the show, I decided to listen to as many episodes that you have up on the podcast. And so if you're a first-time listener of the Abeg Who Send Me podcast, just know that there's a whole lot more that came before this recording. So after you're done listening to this one, I want you to scroll back and listen to the other episodes, because there are wonderful conversations that she has had with other people in data analytics, the entrepreneurial development space, fashion, people from all kinds of industries. So there's a lot that you can learn. And so when I listened to all these other different entrepreneurs speaking, I heard lots of things that they talk about that tie into what we're going to discuss today, which is sales mistakes. And so that's what I want us to explore today. So I have 2 or 3 things that I am going to talk about that I think are important. But then after I'm done with that, I would like to look over previous conversations that you've had with your other interviewees, your other guests, and then we'll tease out mistakes and principles from there that apply to all of us, regardless of whatever industry that we are involved in.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, cool. Now, the first mistake that a lot of people do in trying to promote their sales is that they are late or they are not on time. And that is a cardinal sin when it comes to sales. Now, the reason why we should always be on time as a sales professional is because, first of all, it enhances our credibility given the environment that we're in. In Nigeria, there's this thing of Nigerian time or if you're listening to this and you're listening from Ghana or Cameroon, there's this whole thing of African time. Yes, exactly. And so when you actually do show up on time, it sets you apart from everybody else, because I've experienced it time and time again where back when I was seriously into my wedding photography practice, it's something that I heard over and over again when people would say, a wedding photographer who actually shows up on time. Wow, I got that a lot. And just because of that very fact, people would say this guy is professional, all because I would, if we agreed that we're supposed to show up at 9 o'clock, I would be there 8:30 or maybe 8:45. So being on time enhances your credibility, and it's something that you should do if you realize that you are a sales professional. Now, another reason why you should always be on time, and it's something that TT and I have experienced this morning, is because sometimes when you arrange a sales meeting, sometimes you're going to have a presentation. Like in the wedding photography space, maybe you're going to look over some books. If you're in fashion design, like Winjobi, who is one of the guests that have been interviewed earlier on the podcast, Modular Winjobi. Sometimes you have to make a presentation, you come with sketchbooks, or maybe you want to use your iPad and stuff like that. So whenever you have a tech component related to the sale, or whenever there's an aspect of the sales presentation that depends on other parties, your partners or third-party suppliers or whatever, it's always nice to show up ahead of time and iron out all the kinks so that you guys are going to be able to start on time. If you and the client say you guys are going to meet at 12 and you guys are going to have a presentation and it's going to involve Zoom, let's see, what else? Zoom or some other tech component, then it beholds on you to actually make sure that you're there a couple of minutes before to make sure that everything everything is set exactly. And so if you are in the fashion space like Winjobi is, and you don't carry around physical physical portfolios, I'm not sure what they call them in that space, to show your work, but everything is digital, then you actually should be there. It's better for you to be there on time and discover that, your iPad battery is flat, or that this app is not working, or that app is not working, and it gives you enough time to get a little charge before they show up, or to try and reformat your apps or look for alternatives. It just gives you enough time to anticipate any possible problems, sort out any actual problems that you have, and just make sure that everything is nice and tidy before you have that business meeting. So that's one of the cardinal rules that I like to tell people across whatever industry that you are involved in, that you have to follow. So that's the number one sales mistake. People are not on time. So you should always be on time. It makes you more professional. In Nigeria, especially, and in Africa as a whole, it makes you stand out because generally our people, we don't show up on time. And then it helps you solve any problems, anticipate any problems that might arise. So that is number one. Okay, so should I go straight on to number two, or
Yes,
do you have
please.
anything to add?
I think that it brings to mind Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law says that anything that can go wrong would go wrong. If we approach sales meetings like that, or even if you approach our businesses like that, to say, okay, so it should take me 30 minutes to get to this place, all things being equal. But then we should factor in Murphy's Law that, okay, what if something happens? What if there's traffic, or there's an accident on the way and there's a whole lot of traffic, or something. So if it would take you 30 minutes, I think anticipating some 45, 50 minutes is on the safer side, because anything could go wrong, just like what we experienced this morning. So yeah, solid point. Thank you.
Okay, and you're absolutely correct about the whole thing, anticipating that things can go wrong on the road. In fact, I used to have a problem keeping to time until I watched this old program. It's really old, so I don't know if you guys will be able to find it. That's those of you who are listening to the podcast. It was I can't remember the title of the show, but it's something that used to be on an old MTV channel. I don't know if they're still alive, still around. I think it was MTV Base Africa. So it was on MTV Base Africa, one of these shows that is also built around entrepreneurship. And then there's this old musician. Most of you might not know who he is, but he's someone that was really big before I was born. His name is Ice Cube, and he ended up doing some acting. So if any of you are familiar with him, you might know him from his acting roles. But some of us know him from his music career. He was a musician with NWA. It was some people consider him to be one of the pioneers of gangster rap. So anyway, so Ice Cube, he has been able to transition from a music career, and he runs several businesses now. He's into movies and things like that. And on this show, he was mentoring another a young black entrepreneur who is in the fashion space and who is a skateboarder. And so Ice Cube had a meeting with this guy, and I think the meeting was supposed to be for 10, but the guy had been partying the night before, and I think he overslept or something like that. Anyway, he rushed into the meeting, and Ice Cube he's not a very, some people are nice and polite, but he is more like one of these rough big brother types. Okay. So this guy came in and was apologizing. Yeah, very blunt. And you can see that Ice Cube was just there sitting and then frowning. And then once he stopped talking, Ice Cube just unleashed on the guy. It was like, what are you doing this for? Like, we already have it difficult as it is. Like, people expect that, we are niggas and we're going to be sloppy and everything and all whatnot. How can you come in here, with this whole attitude and blah, 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 and all whatnot? And the guy Ice Cube just unleashed on this guy. Now, look, people in our own situation, we always have to be on time. The guy was still trying to make excuses. And then Ice Cube shouted something that I've never forgotten. What he shouted was, if you can't be on time, be early. And the thing just stuck with me like, oh, yeah, now if you can't be on time, then be early. The reason why it resonated is because at the time, I was always late for everything, but my mom is always on time for everything. Somehow, my mom knows how to be there for 11 o'clock for an 11 o'clock meeting, but I have problems with that. And so it just resonated what he was trying to say, and it's something that I've applied ever since. So I never try to be on time now. I always try to be early. So if the client says the meeting is 12, in my mind, I'm aiming to be there 11:15, because actually things do happen. And I've been in those scenarios where the meeting is 12, I leave at 11:15, and then a trailer falls across the road, and then there's 30-minute hold up. And the only reason why I got there on time actually was because I left at 11:15 instead of leaving at 11:45 to get to the meeting. Well, I'm based in Abuja, so it's, we're spoiled when it comes to traffic. So in Abuja, you actually can leave your house at 11:15 and get there for a 12 o'clock meeting. So yes, things do happen. And if you're like me, or if you're like former me who used to have a problem with keeping to time, just remember the immortal words of Ice Cube. If you can't be on time, be early. If the person says 12 o'clock and you know that you're perpetually late, leave your house at 11. Don't say Google Maps said that it will be 45 minutes to get from Ikeja to Ikeja to Awolowo Road in Ikoyi. So don't rely on that. Just be early, because that might be the day a trailer falls across the road, and then there's going to be all kinds of problems.
The gods of the traffic are on the streets.
Yes, exactly, they are. Okay, so the second thing that I want us to talk about now is the second mistake is that a lot of us don't realize that we are all salespeople. For some reason, we assume that we are our title. You assume that you're a podcaster. You assume that you're a photographer, or that you assume you're a fashion person. But you're not a fashion person, actually. You actually are a sales person, first and foremost. And this is the reason why. And it's a question that I pose at almost every seminar that I handle. I ask people, what is the purpose of a business? And people talk about all things. People say the purpose of a business is money. People say that the purpose of a business is personal development. That is to develop yourself. Some people talk about the environmental and social benefits that can come from a business, like the employment opportunities that you provide, and then the social causes that you address as a business. And yes, in a sense, all of these things are correct. But if you read the work of Peter Drucker, he was, I think he's dead now, I have to confirm, but he was a management consultant in America. And
it's like the management king.
Oh yeah, exactly. Okay, you've heard of him.
Anybody in management should know Peter Drucker. He's like the boss of the space.
Okay, yeah. So there's something Peter Drucker wrote in one of his books that I didn't agree with at the time, but with more experience, I've seen now that he's right. And for Peter Drucker, he asked the question, "What is the purpose of a business?" And he, did his thing, as an academic, ran through a couple of scenarios, and then he concluded that the purpose of the business is to create a customer. And at the time, I didn't think that made sense. But this is his rationale. The purpose of a business is to create a customer, because if you do not create a customer, then you are not doing business, in quote, over anything. So for Mr. Winjobi, who is into fashion design, if he doesn't wake up and create a customer for that day, he is not designing anything. He might design for his wife and his children, but in that case, that's not a business. For your previous guest, Korede Taomo, who is into data analytics, if he doesn't wake up every day, every week, every month and think about how do I create a customer, how do I attract a customer, how do I find market, as we like to say in Nigeria, if you don't do that, then he's not doing data analytics over anything. So he can wake up and be analyzing for himself and his family, but then again, that is not a business. And it's the same over all the other people that you have interviewed. So whether it's Modoro Toluwa Ajayi, the fellow who is in talent management, if he doesn't create a customer, then he is not in business, he is not doing anything. So really, what we are not data analysts, we are not fashion enthusiasts, we are not talent management specialists, we are not business consultants. First and foremost, we are salespeople, because our primary function is to create the customer. That is what keeps us in business in the first place. It is only after we've created the customer that all these other things occur, all these other artifacts. So it is only when we have a customer that there's social impact, because we get some money from them and we're able to take care of orphanages or whatever it is we do in our community. It is only then that we're going to get the money, because of course they pay for our services because there's a value exchange. And let's see, what else? Personal development. Yes, we're only going to get the personal development and personal growth because we are trying to look for people in the first place, and that involves us trying to acquire new skills, new ways of thinking, and new processes. So the money, the personal development, and the social impact only come after we create a customer, after we look for a customer. And that is the reason why, even though it sounds counterintuitive, our Ebon Peter Drucker actually is correct. The primary purpose is to create a customer. And with that, he says the most important functions that you do in business is marketing and innovation, and that any other thing is just support or an expense. So those are your two primary functions as a business person, as a salesperson. So for Mr. Taomo, who is into data analytics, those are the primary things that he has to do. He has to wake up every day, and his primary functions are marketing and innovation. Marketing, that's the whole idea of how do we reach people, how do we engage them, how do we convert them so that they become customers. And then innovation, that is when you innovate around your product, your service, or your idea, because of course you can't be stale. So that's our second mistake. You assume that you are your title. So you are not a wedding photographer. You are not a data analyst. You are not a fashion entrepreneur. You are a salesperson.
First and
when
foremost.
you wake up, first and foremost. And then when you wake up, your primary job today, this week, this month, this year is marketing and innovation. So that's be our obsession. How do we find people? How do we engage them? How do we bring them into the pipeline? And then how am I going to innovate on my product and my service offering? So those are your key things. So those are the two mistakes that I like to talk about most of the time. And if you have anything to add, then after that we can start going into the episodes with your previous guests and then run through a couple of things, a couple of mistakes that I can pull from there. But before I do that, let me just point out one thing. When I say sales mistakes that we're getting from these conversations, I'm not necessarily saying that these people That's Korede and Winjobi and the others. I'm not saying that they made these mistakes. It's just that in the discussions that happened between them and Titi, the able host of this podcast, in the conversations that followed, they pulled out a couple of ideas that I think we can flesh out some more, especially by bringing a sales perspective to them. So I'm not accusing these people of being sloppy or making any mistakes. It's just that there are issues here that are cardinal that we can lend a sales perspective to, and that I would like for us to stretch out. So Titi, anything to add before we move on?
All right, thank you for that, for putting out that disclaimer. Okay, so I think that you've said it the best way that I would have said it to. I found out that a lot of entrepreneurs would say, "I'm not a salesperson." So, a salesperson, I don't like selling. I don't like, and we forget that first and foremost, we are all salespeople. We are selling ourselves every second of the day to our friends, to family, to our spouse, to our children. It's about just wanting people to buy into the concept of you and all of that. So yeah, thank you very much for that. An entrepreneur should see his or herself as first and foremost a salesperson. So yeah.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct, because for my podcast, the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast, that's some of the feedback that I've gotten a lot, because people say that there are things that we talk about over there that apply to them, not just in personal life, but in the career as well. So the thing is, we're always selling. So what Titi said about selling to your spouse or selling to your co-workers is absolutely correct. And so in the office space, it's it's the same. You're trying to figure out what are the key agendas for the department or for the organization. What does your boss think is important? So excuse me. And then how do we figure out what the different agendas are, the important stakeholders are? How do we drive those relationships? And how do we move all these things one step forward? So we're selling all the time. So we might as well embrace it. The reason why people say that they don't like selling, or they don't consider themselves salespeople, is because they have experienced lots of examples where people did sales wrong, where people were unethical, where people were pushy, where people were manipulative. And that is what, sorry. And so that's where we get the negative ideas around sales. And it's part of my mission, not just with my show, but also appearing over here on this podcast today and the other things that I put out on the internet, to show that selling is not as dirty and as unethical as most people make it to seem. There's a clean way to sell, there's an ethical way to sell, and most importantly, there's a way to sell that aligns with your own personality and with your own beliefs, so you don't have to be anything else. And I tell people that all the time. You don't have to be me. You don't have to sound like me. You don't have to be gregarious. You don't have to be friendly. You don't have to be the talk of the party. You can be quiet, introverted and it's not a problem. You don't have to be attractive. You can just be you, and you can sell.
Very true. Very true. Thank you for that, Mr. Terry. So let's move on to
okay, all right.
You like us
now,
to flesh up.
Okay, so one of the things I want us to tease out from this something that you had from the conversation with Damilola Obidairo. I can't remember. Obidairo, okay, yes. Now, I can't remember what business he is involved in, because, like I said, I listened to over half of your podcast, and then I was making notes. So I can't remember what he was involved in. But there was a part of your conversation where he was talking about being entrepreneurial versus being an entrepreneur. And it's a debate that has been going on for a very long time. Are entrepreneurs born or entrepreneurs made? And there's something that he said about that is first and foremost an attitudinal thing, and then there is a DNA component to it. That was part of the conversation where he was talking about how people handle stress and stuff like that. That it's attitudinal, but then there's a DNA component, and that's one of the things that I want us to tease out. So, because there's a DNA component to who we are, how we behave, and how we respond to stress. The average person makes the mistake of believing that sales is not for me, or that I cannot sell, or that I cannot be entrepreneurial because I have 1, 2, 3, 4 business traits, or not business traits, personal traits. And so there's this limiting idea about selling. So that is one of the things that's one mistake that a lot of people make. So yes, there is some science that shows that there's a DNA component to how gregarious you are, your attitude towards risk, reward, adventure, thrill seeking, things like that. So I'm not going to deny that there is a DNA component to it. But what we should pay most attention to was the part where Damilola said that there is an attitudinal component to it. So that is what we have to key in on. So there's an attitudinal component to sales, to business entrepreneurship, and you can overcome a lot of whatever deficiencies you have so long as you have an open growth mindset. Because when we're talking about entrepreneurship and we're talking about sales, a lot of the things you need are learnable skills. So the example that we've been talking about, that we spoke about earlier on the show, about being on time. So yes, maybe there is a genetic component, or maybe they cost you in the village that you will never be on time for everything. That is out of your hands.
Like
your DNA is out of your hands.
Village people.
Yes, village people. So village people, that's out of your hands. And then your DNA, that is out of your hands. But then, being the whole thing of anticipating problems and planning and things like that to make sure that you get somewhere on time, that is a learnable skill. So you should take it from me, from someone who used to be late for every single thing. I mean, even when I was in OAU, I was late for exams time and time again. As in, I'm rushing in just as they're giving the papers. Yeah, exactly. So I used to do that a lot. So, but the thing is, it's a learnable skill. Being on time is a learnable skill. Anticipating problems, it's a learnable skill, and it's something that either by doing some research on the internet, or reaching out to other people who you admire, or hanging around in certain circles, there are lots of things that you can learn to improve yourself and improve your processes. So pay attention to the attitudinal aspect, and don't worry about the DNA component or whatever the other challenges are. Because if people don't like you in the village, you really can't do anything about that, and you can't do anything about your DNA. But there are lots of learnable skills that you can lots of learnable skills that you can acquire that is going to help you in growing your businesses and in being a good salesperson. So that's one of the mistakes. People just assume that, oh, this thing is not for me. I'm too quiet. I'm too mousy. I'm too shy. I don't like quarreling with people. I don't like talking to strangers. But these are things that can be overcome. They are just learnable skills. Okay. Hopefully, I want to be.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I wanted to, before we move far away from that, I just wanted to buttress a point when we are talking about the DNA component and the attitudinal component. I think that conversation comes up in everything: entrepreneurship, leadership, talent. You hear people argue about footballers and say, okay, this one's a natural, this one had to work for it, that kind of thing. But I think it just boils down to this principle of give me this AA confession, is it Alcoholics Anonymous? Yeah, exactly. Where they say give me the strength to control the things that I can and accept the things I can't. So the things that we can control is our attitude to all of these things. So yes, if you cannot, you accept whatever is in your DNA, but the things that you can control, which most times are the important things, which most times are the determinant things, are things like attitude, things like being teachable and being open to learning about how one can be better and improve his or herself. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add to what he said. So.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct. And it's also something that Stephen Covey and his son also write about. Just pay attention to the things within your sphere of influence and your locus of control. That is all you can do. Because when it comes to business, entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, there are things that you have control over, and that there are things that you can't. So you just do the best you can do, and then you leave the rest to providence. And you find that over time, and that's something that Brian Tracy talks about when he talks about the law of averages. Over time, these things average out. So if you sit down in your house, for instance, one is not going to come to meet you. But if you go out, or if you use the internet, you start trying to actually try and promote your business or chase down the money. The thing is, you will win some, you will lose some. But the more you do, it's the law of averages. Over time, it evens out. But if you just stay at home and you don't do anything, then of course, nothing is going to happen.
Very true, very true. Thank you, Mr. The conversation is really educative and enlightening. And I think that the subconscious lesson that you're teaching me and the rest of the listeners is that we should be readers, because you mentioned like how many authors within the last 30 minutes thereabouts. You mentioned Peter Drucker, you mentioned Steve Covey, you mentioned Brian Tracy, you mentioned Ice Cube, yeah, the actor and the singer. So that's an unconscious lesson that you're teaching, that one should always learn and be resourceful, read and know what's happening around you.
Okay.
Right. Thank you for that. So
you're welcome. Oh, by the way, a lot of these things that we're talking about now can be fleshed out because they have much more implications and more applications, but we're not going to be able to do that within the confines of the podcast. So hopefully in future episodes, if I get invited back, there are going to be some things that we can tease out. So for those of you who are listening to the show right now, if there's anything that you find interesting, intriguing, that you'd like to hear more about, then reach out to Titilayo. She's really accessible. She responds to messages very quickly. She's very responsive. So just reach out to her. Email, Instagram, WhatsApp,
LinkedIn.
Tell her LinkedIn. So tell her I like this. Tell her I like this. I didn't like that. I don't agree with this. How can you guys expand more on that? So that for future shows, for her future guests, she can bring up all these issues, or hopefully bring me back again on future episodes so that we can hash these things out some more.
Very true, very true. Thank you for all that.
Right.
That's the advantage you get from having a podcaster on your podcast. You just help you balance things out. Thank you very much. Okay,
right.
So because I think time is fast spent.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely we are bringing you back very soon, because we've not even scratched the surface of the conversation. But just so that this episode is not overly long. Exactly.
Yeah.
So what would you like to conclude or leave us with till the next time that we hear again from your humble self?
Okay, well, there's nothing else I'd like to add. I guess I'll just make a recap about these things that we've examined so far. And then also to reiterate something that you said in the beginning, that these principles that we're talking about, you can see that they apply to anybody, no matter the industry, whether you're a photographer, whether you're a podcaster, or you're in data analytics, or in fashion design, web design, graphic arts, no matter what it is. So pay attention to these things, apply them. You're going to see differences that they bring to your business. So realize, like Egbon Peter Drucker said, you are not your title. You are a salesperson. Your primary focus as a business owner or as an entrepreneur is marketing and innovation. Pay attention to those two things first. When you do that and you're getting some skill, you can worry about business systems and everything. But the thing is, if you don't pay attention to marketing and then to the innovation aspect, you're systematizing over nothing. Because there are lots of people who want to start a business and they decide to get the logo and hire all the consultants and everything, but you're not reaching out to clients. You're just wasting your time. And then remember, we should always be on time. It sets us apart from other people. It makes us credible, especially in the African and the Nigerian context. It sets us out to be a professional. And then realize that when it comes to this whole thing of entrepreneurs born or made, that you can't change the goodwill or the bad will that people have towards you, and you can't change your DNA, but have a growth mindset remember that a lot of things are attitudinal, and with that attitude, you're going to be able to acquire the learnable skills and transferable capital it is that you need to develop yourself and to develop your business. So for any other things, we'll get to them at the next time that I am invited over here on the show. But don't forget, reach out to Titi Layo if this is the first time listening to the podcast. Let her know, is she doing a good job? What do you like? What do you disagree with? What do you want to hear more of? Let her know. And also remember to subscribe to the podcast. Also remember to share, and then share freely and promote it. Because there are lots of people out there in Nigeria especially who are listening to Gist podcast and entertainment podcast and political podcast, but who don't realize that we have these assets right now, that we have business podcasts that can help us, yes, in the areas of personal development, business development, and entrepreneurship.
Wow, thank you very much, Mr. Tavi. Thank you very much. I think that should sum up what I want to say. Thank you for such an interesting conversation. And pending the time that we bring you back again, people can, because sales is something you consume every day till you become it, till you can live and speak it. So you can check out on Mr. Tavi's podcast, Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry. So where they can find it on all platforms, yes?
Oh yes, it's available on all platforms, Apple, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, everything. But if you're searching for the podcast, because search on podcast is really, really poor, you're better off searching for my name. And so my name is spelled Tavershima. That's Tavershima. And then Ayede is Ayede. So whenever you search for the name, my podcasts come up. Whenever you search for sales for the Nigerian wedding industry, a whole bunch of sales podcasts come up, especially foreign sales podcasts. Yeah, so you're better off just searching for my name instead. Or if you're in your browser, if you're in Google or Safari or whatever you use, then if you hit sales for the Nigerian wedding industry there, then yes, a couple of links will come up, and any of those links should take you directly to the blog where you can listen to your podcast app of choice. But yeah, I'm available wherever you're looking. I'm available.
All right, that's good to know. Thank you very much, sir. It was really an interesting conversation. I think you said it also. Thank you, guys. Do follow, share, give your feedback. It's very important. And yes, and do have a lovely time.